Ahead and get started again. I'm hoping that we are going to have much more success tonight than we had last week. This is Sue Petrisin from the Michigan District of Kiwanis. I want to let everyone know tonight, once again, that we are going to ask you to mute yourself so that we can continue the questions. We're going to review many of the questions from last week. I will tell you that I've had a lot of questions come in that are basically the same as the last time. So since we're recording this time and we're hoping that it's going to work, it will work. We're going to repeat a lot of those. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. I have a couple people watching chat for me, and we will continue this program this week, and then we'll get that information out to everyone. I'm happy to report that we have with us our International President, Katrina, is with us. We have several members of the board here. He's the Executive Director Designate, correct, Paul? Is also with us. So, and I know there are several other board members here, and I don't want to skip anybody along the way. And then we have our president-elect, Lee Kuan Yeung, is with us. So I'm happy to introduce to you tonight, again, the immediate past president, Bert West. He's the one wearing the cowboy hat, if you haven't figured that out by now. And tonight is Kiwanis, Let's Talk. We will continue these programs for the considerable future. I'm working out a schedule. We will be hosting the candidates for the international vice president and the candidates for the international trustee in the future. And then I have several other requests for workshops, one on artificial intelligence, AI, which has become a big thing in ChatGPT. So we've got a request in for how to set up a membership team. So those are some of the ones that are going to be moving along here in the next couple of weeks. I will post all of this on the Facebook site. And there also is a Kiwanis Let's Talk events on Facebook. So I'm quickly learning how to use Instagram, so I can start to put some stuff on Instagram and maybe a few other things, but for now, we're going to go this way. So we have a number of questions that, just like last week, I'm up to like 32 pages of questions. Many of them are the same, but we're going to continue to recap this. So, and we will go through and pull this information out and make it available to all the clubs, in hopes that we can do it in some smaller portions, but you may have to show this in pieces to your club along the way. So, immediate past President Bert, let's talk about the questions that we have come in. Why is the board, as we all know, at the Kiwanis International Convention last year in Minneapolis, a dues increase was defeated by the House of Delegates, very close, as a matter of fact. But Bert, why don't you give us some history on that and tell us why the board is coming back for $25 when they asked for $30 last year?
Well, I think the most important part to remember is that we heard all year long, leading up to $30 in Minneapolis, that the members felt that was too much. And they asked us at the convention to really look at it and take it. And we were doing $30, based on a long-term, plan to move forward so we wouldn't have to do this again. And so when we had long discussions about it, we said, well, we really need, with some cuts, is $25. And if we do $25, then we're going to be good, that we don't have to do this 3 years from now or 2 years from now. If we came back and it was a lot lower, then we would be doing this again. And so there was just a lot of discussion with the board of what we could really live with and what the members could live with. And leading up to Minneapolis, we felt like we were hearing a lot of discussion that 30 was too much. We were hearing a lot of discussion at the convention that 30 was too much. And there was a couple of amendments that came forward, and they basically said, we want you to go back and come back with a number that you feel we absolutely must have to do this. And that's what we did. And that's why it's 25 and not 30. But it was a lot of board discussion at the Audit and Finance Committee. For those that don't understand how the Kiwanis International Board works, it's broken up into committees, two main committees, Audit and Finance and Membership. And the Audit and Finance Committee went through this after the convention and after it was defeated, and they went through the budget, and then they went through what would $25 look like if we did this over 4 years, what would $25 look like if or $20, what would 15, what would 30? And so they've laid it all out, and this was the number that we felt, with the membership totals we have currently, that we could bring forward, that the members would support, and also that the international that Kiwanis could not live with, but Kiwanis could, work with, and then that would help us get forward into the future.
Thanks,
But we
Bert.
heard what they said last year. That's why it's 25 and not 30. We heard what the members had to say.
And I think we will add to that I've had several questions that said, why did we get the information so late last year? The
I think,
information came out
yeah.
and then you wanted us to vote. What happened?
Yeah, I don't know how we didn't get that information out, because the number 30 was decided in January. We were still debating back and forth, whether it should be 40, whether it should be 10, whether it should be 12, 15. I mean, it went back and forth, back and forth. And in October, we thought we had the number settled. And the more we talked about it in January, the number was finalized at 30 to move forward. And then it immediately went out, but I don't think we had as many opportunities early on to do this with you, to do the Let's Talk program, to do some other things. Plus, we were also cutting back on some of the mailers and some of the publication pieces. So members weren't seeing it in their mailbox. They were probably seeing it in their emails, but if you're anything like me, a lot of emails don't get read in full. So, So I think we're going to do a much better job this year. Have that. We saw that we didn't, we needed to take a next step forward to move this stuff, or to get the information out.
Thank you, Bert. That was one of the things that I had talked with is we did this program during the pandemic and during that time frame, and said we wanted to make sure that we were getting this information out ahead of time. And this was a way to bring back this Thursday night program called Kiwanis Let's Talk. So this was a great opportunity for us to bring forward the information to everyone, to get it out there and to see if we can get through and vet all the information and make sure that our members and those of you on this call have the opportunity to have the information to share with your clubs, so that you can talk about it and answer the questions that your members may have, because we know not everyone comes to convention, but we want to make sure that your members, if you're representing your club, they have the information that they need to make that decision and to give you guidance on how you would vote at the International Convention next year in Denver. So let's talk about a COLA, a cost of living adjustment. That was one thing that, that was another common question. Why didn't we have a COLA? Why wasn't that proposed? What's the history on that? And there is a history on that.
There's quite a bit of a history on the COLA, cost of living increase, or, in 2015, the Kiwanis International Board presented this to the House of Delegates, and it failed with 73% of the delegates voting against a COLA. In 2016, a revised version, I believe I know who the president was that year, voted 67% voted against it in 2016. And if you'll all remember, that was in Toronto, where Sue was the president, and I got elected as trustee that day. So yeah, so
it was a great convention.
It was a great convention, and Jewel was amazing. So it never really came back again, because it was defeated so soundly both times, and it just didn't seem like that was anything the members wanted. I had some discussions last year about a cost of living increase, and one of the parts that the discussion was around was that a club could have brought this forward. Our district can bring this forward too, if they thought this was a better plan for us to move forward in the future, back then, and nobody ever did. But it's been pretty soundly defeated, and it's something that I don't think the members have ever really wanted to do. And so I think that a lot of boards, including me, just really didn't have the appetite to go out there and put it out there again, with as how bad it was defeated both times. It wasn't like it was 50-50 or we were at 60%. I mean, this thing was defeated soundly. And so the House of Delegates, whether that's not the same as the members worldwide, the House of Delegates showed that they just did not want that.
Bert, let's talk a little bit about what was in our reserves. One of the reasons that we also the board looked at a dues increase was that we had money in the bank, so to say, and there was a concern because that was our members' money. It was sitting there. So talk about that aspect.
So, when you pay your dues, we have operating expenses, and sometimes the budget comes in less than what we make in a year over, in the late, teens and the early teens. And so our reserves started doing really well. And our investments started doing really well, just like all of your probably investments did. And so as it climbed, we considered a dues increase in like 18 or 19 or, something to like a small one. And I'll be honest with you, I was one of the ones that said, hey, we got $20 million in the bank, or we got $22 million in the bank. We have the members' money, and we can't go ask for more if we have it sitting here. And so that was reason why, when the reserve started growing, we decided that we just couldn't ask you for more money if we already had your money. This wasn't a charitable gift that you gave us for those dues money. It was your dues, and it was our job to use it judiciously and and really be really good with the money and be good stewards of it. And so we had the perfect storm. We had COVID hit us, and then the market went down. And so this reserve that we had up here close to 30 million went down, and then we had to use some of that money to continue with the numbers of members coming down a little bit. And so we had this perfect storm over like 3 or 4 years where this money started coming together. And so then we all looked at it, obviously, after 2 years of not having a convention, and then with the first convention back, we didn't really feel like that was the right time to do it because we were still doing pretty good. And then when that market went down and we had to use some of that, then it made us all a little bit nervous that the reserves weren't where they need to be. And there's a lot of things that go into our reserve account, and I'm going to be totally transparent here. Not all of that can be used. Some of that reserve has to be set aside in case something happens, or just all kinds of things are built into that reserve to protect Kiwanis International, protect you, protect our dues income, and to protect the organization. And so if it says there's 22 million, that doesn't mean there's 22 million we can use. There might only be 10 million can be used, and that's from boards way back. I mean, boards in the 90s and the 80s set aside $6-7 million in reserve for insurance claims just in case. And that insurance reserve is just sitting there, but it's protecting us if one of your clubs has a big event next week and everybody gets food poisoning and we get sued for $10 million. We're protected. It's not going to break Kiwanis because boards in the past have been very judicious about making sure we were always protected. And that's part of why we did that. And that's part of why we didn't, go right up, do the dues increase $5.18 and $5.20 and then $5, so in hindsight, I've been on the board longer than anybody. And I'm the only one on the board that served with Sue. That's it. And so, part of that discussion was my discussion, and maybe we should have done something different. And I take full responsibility for my decisions over the years. But I thought it was the best use of your money. And that's how we got to where we're at right now.
Great. Bert, talk a little bit about how the Kiwanis International Board puts together their annual budget. It's, when we elect our trustees and our vice presidents, our officers, we elect the people we feel are going to do the best job for us and put that trust in those individuals to do that. And I know that having been on the board, and I know Paul can speak to the fact of how that budget is put together. Explain how that is put together so people, not detail by detail, line by line, but
so the budget,
together.
Literally the budget is almost 300 pages long if you really looked at it piece by piece by piece. So Stan, as executive director, Paul moving forward, goes to each department head. And so I'm not going to get them all because I don't know them all, but you have your communications department, you have your membership department, you have your the store, I don't remember what they call that. You have your store, you have the KYP, which handles Key Club and Circle K and Action Club. And, so then you also have Circle K, and then you also have your K Kids, your Builders Club, and all these are in departments, and all these have department heads. And so Stan goes to those department heads and says, we need your budget, and we need to know if it's going to be more or less and why, and you need the justification. And so the process starts with those department heads and the departments, and they bring those budgets forward, and then they bring it all cumulative to the board. But each department works on their budget based on the needs they need. Like last year, let's just take the membership department, for example. Last year, we hired 4 club building specialists for North America. Well, the membership department had to go add that in and put it in there, and then we had to approve it. So that didn't just happen. I had to go through the whole process of the budget from the membership department to look at what will it cost us to have 4 specialists that are actually on the ground, helping knock on doors, helping build clubs. And so then the membership department had to put that forward in the budget and show why we were increasing, and then the board would look at it that way. But that's how the budget's done. It starts at the
department level.
department level, and then goes up, and it goes funnels up to, the audit and finance committee to review it through, and then Bob Broderick puts them all together, and then that's how we come up with, the overview of the budget. And sometimes there's a convention budget and convention teams too, and sometimes one might be a little under, and one might be a little over, but then the board has to take it, and we try not to micromanage it and go, hey, you're 100,000 over here, but you're 100,000 under here. We try to look at it cumulative, instead of line by line. I mean, first of all, they're experts in what they do. They're very good at what they do, and so we like to make them do their job, bring the budget forward, and then for us to review it, and we try to look at it as a whole.
Talk a little bit about our staff. How many staff are at Kiwanis International headquarters, or ballpark figure? And what impact have we had? I mean, I know we've lost staff who have left. As we talk, these are professional staff members, and this is their living, and they do what they do because they love the mission of who we are as an organization.
Not everybody is cut out to work for a nonprofit, and not everybody has the heart to work for a nonprofit. And I'll just be perfectly honest with you. The guy in the cowboy hat on the screen that you're looking at, there's no way I could do that job. I don't have that ability in me, to do that kind of work and to pour my heart and soul into the job every day. I mean, I sell a lot of stuff with the roofing material, but I'm not cut out for that. But we have people that are willing to do that. People are dedicated to our mission. People are dedicated to the objects of Kiwanis, and they know what we have to do to move those objects forward and to support the members. And so I think there's, at one time, Paul, you might have to chime in here. I think it was 104, but some people left, and I think we're at like 97. Is that correct, Paul? Somewhere in that? And I'm within 1 or 2, right?
In 1 or 2, we're about 99 or so.
Okay. And so, and that's staff members around the world. So that's not in the office. All of them aren't in the office. You have that. You have your club opening specialists. We have our area directors. We have our staff in Europe. So with that is cumulative around the world that works for Kiwanis International. And so we had some resignations. A lot of you on the call remember Denise Parker, and so she resigned, and Bill retired. Big difference.
Big difference.
Yeah, big difference. I'm sorry. She retired. Bill retired, and several others retired. A couple moved on for better opportunities, or an opportunity that they thought was better. And so that 104 didn't get replaced automatically. Now, when that number got down, and we hired the 4 club opening specialists, but we're still under that number, and so. But roughly 100 people work for Kiwanis International.
And when a position becomes vacant for whatever reason, that is something that is looked at very carefully by Stan and Paul to say, okay, what is that position? What do we have going on? It's just not an automatic fill.
So we did not put on a hiring freeze by any means whatsoever. But we did ask Stan and now Paul to, because there's some people that are working there that we got to make sure the bills are paid. We got to, and I believe everybody's important and integral to the success of our organization. But we did ask them to look at it, and can we go a couple months without that, position, or can we go a little further? But there's no hiring freeze at Kiwanis International. There's no anything like that. But we did ask them to review all the positions and see, as people transition in or out, do we need that position? Do we not need that position? And I think Stan and Paul have done a great job with that. Mostly Stan, because Paul just started, but I think he's done a great job at looking at that and go, hey, this position, I need to fill this right away, and let's get out, let's advertise. And I don't remember what the position is, and I'm not even going to, but I know he was advertising for one position for like 3 or 4 months trying to get a qualified candidate. And so, once again, not everybody is looking for a job for the nonprofit,
Right, right.
So, yeah.
Very true. I mean, it's a tough job market as a person who went without an accountant for 18 months. I get it. So
Yeah.
I'm no longer doing accounting work, so you're safe.
Okay.
So
I
we're
don't
good.
either.
Yeah, not there. So one of the questions that came up was, now that you're looking at the budget and you're making these cuts, what kind of things, what areas were the impacted? How did you determine what was, not covered, or what you were going to cut from the budget?
Well, I think 2 things impacted it. What could be done in a relatively quick manner to cut expenses? What could be done that we could maybe add back in that wouldn't be a long-term cut, but we obviously had to cut with the loss of members, like we, take versus, not getting the dues increase. We had to make sure, because we couldn't dip into the reserves. We did not want to dip into the reserves farther. We didn't want to go down even more. And so, it's one of those things where, like the governor-elect training, to go virtual instead of in person in Indianapolis. That was a hard one for me. A lot of people on this call, I can't see everybody, but a lot of people on this call are past governors. And that was difficult, because one of the best memories of my life in Kiwanis was that first night I walked into 3636 Woodview Trace as a governor-elect and met all them people. I mean, and I met the guys from Europe, and then I sat at dinner with the governor from Japan, and we just talked through an interpreter. And it was just an incredible experience. And I realized that how big Kiwanis really is and the worldwide impact that it has. And so that was a hard one, but it was one that we knew we could do and still, get the training done. So there were some other trainings that are doing virtual. There's a couple trainings in other parts of the world that went virtual this year that would have been in person. So a lot of that went virtual instead of in person. Then we asked the staff, Stan not to hire, unless he absolutely needed somebody. So there was part of that. Trying to think of, and the convention, a little bit of stuff with the convention that's not, I mean, my goodness, we had the Oak Ridge boys last year, right? I don't think we're going to have Garth Brooks this year. I promise you, we're not going to have Garth Brooks, So not that we would, but I mean, so there was just some things like that. But I want to point out, we were looking for 8% of the total budget, 7 to 8% to shrink that down. It sounds like a big number when you say we took $1 million out of the budget, but that was, 7 to 8% of the overall budget. And I think the staff did that. Some of the things that we did to cut costs was defray some capital expenditures. I mean, we got a building that's 30 years old. They're going to need, by the way, I've been on the roof. It's going to need a roof, okay, at some point, but the parking lot, and things like that. So there's some of the things that were capital expenditures that we were going to spend that were built into the time frame and the budgets, from years ago, that weren't being spent this year. So there's a lot of things like that, but, I'm sure that, I don't want to get down in the weeds. I don't know how many Post-it notes they bought versus how many they have budgeted for. I mean, but each department had to come up with some cuts, and they did.
And I think, I've been talking to a couple of people. I was trying to explain it to some people the other day because they said, well, what line items did we cut? Well, I think about it when I look to cut my cable. My cable, I mean, how many people's cables bills $200, $250, and you start looking at it and go, what am I doing? I didn't cut the cable completely out or the Wi-Fi. I just cut it back to only 50 channels.
Well,
Those are the types of cuts I made. And I think as a staff, and I think as, we as individuals, when I look to cut my budget, I look at things that I can just kind of cut down versus going full force with everything I do. Like, not buying the biggest and the best or the most, but is there something else I can make work? And I think that's something that as an organization, we always do. It's like, what can we do that's not going to have that big? We still have to make a cut, but we're not going to tell everybody to bring their own pens and pencils.
We also, one of the other big ones, not big, it wasn't big, but we cut down on some of the travel policies, like spousal travel. So, if I travel somewhere, if I went to a convention, you asked me to go to, the Taiwan convention, and if Sandy goes with me, I assure you that I'm paying for it. Kiwanis is not paying for that. And, so the spouse travel was another one. It's not a lot, but it was probably $25,000 or $30,000, over the, the year. So there was other items similar to that, and we asked the board, to cut down on their expenses. We're obviously not having a January board meeting, that's virtual. So there's quite a few things like that we could do virtually. I don't think it's better virtually. It's much better in person. I think we get more accomplished, not just as a board, but when we do trainings, in-person trainings, I feel like are very, very beneficial. And some of the best memories I have, I can tell you about all the ones I've been to. I remember, I was joking with somebody the other day about when we kicked off the Lemonade, in 2011, and how big that big room was and everything, and how much fun that was. But, so those were kind of the things that we knew we could do that maybe we can add back in if we get the dues increase. And so I don't see us going this way forever, but I would hope that if we get the dues increase, that we could add back in-person governor-elect training, add back in some of the membership trainings that we do for, CLE, and some of the membership trainings we do at conventions with the districts. I think it's very important that, members of the board are there. And I also think it's very important that our staff is there to do some of the training for lieutenant governor training, for, president's training. And those things we're hoping that, we'll be able to get right back in and get going again.
So you mentioned the word travel. Let's talk about travel and get some of these questions that I was asked at the sessions I was at. Was you all fly first class, don't you?
Oh,
so
I love
it. For first class tickets for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I really am surprised this is still a topic of discussion, to be honest with you. The travel policy at Kiwanis International strictly says nobody flies business class or first class, and nobody's ever allowed first class. It's business class, and only if the flight is over 7 hours, and only for the president. So, this year, if I had to go to Europe, I'm flying coach, unless I pay for it myself, which I do a lot, and a lot of board members do. I can't see who else on the call, but a lot of board members pay for their own upgrades. I'm a big guy. I need a little bit of room. Sandy don't need as much room, but but so this year, only Katrina is allowed to fly business class, and the flight has to be over 7 hours. If she's flying domestically, there's no upgrades available. If she's flying to Iceland, there's no upgrades available because it's not a 7-hour flight. It's really, that's the policy. My buddy Quan Young's on the call. Poor guy. Every time he gets on a plane, it's 12 hours. We just heard it, but he's not allowed to upgrade. So I don't know why this keeps coming up. I don't know what it is. Maybe, but it shouldn't. It's not. It's a non-issue, to be honest with you. But I do believe the president, after being president, you've been president,
right?
Definitely. The stress on their body is really, really tough. And I've been in a lot of meetings where I had to struggle to stay awake, after traveling for a long time, and then going right into meetings and things. And, and to be able to say that, well, let's just send them a day early, that would not have worked for me. It would not have worked at all. I mean, I still run a business. I still got, 18 people working for me that I have to make sure that I'm there as much as possible. Don't tell them I left early today. They don't know, but, but I mean, it's not every president could do that. And not every president's retired. And so, I don't think that that's a viable option. So I just think that it's a non-topic, and I really don't know why we're still talking about it.
And I can speak for me, and I'm sure there's the other one that you guys can say how many times you would wear your sweatpants on the plane and in the plane bathroom or in the airport bathroom before you come through security. You're changing to look like you've been dressed nice for the whole day.
I did it in the plane, so I could have that bigger mirror, and it was just, and so I would walk into the bathroom on the plane, in sweatpants and my slippers, and I'd come out with a coat and a tie and a hat, and they're like, "What the heck was that, Clark Kent?" Or so
Yeah,
yeah,
we did what we did what we had to do to make it work, right?
yeah.
We did what we had to do.
I
to
wouldn't
make
change it for the world. I wouldn't change any of it. I mean,
exactly.
so yeah.
Right. So speaking of that, the other question we've got, and I can tell you that I've had 3 or 4 of them in the pile of questions here, is what about alcohol? We hear you spend $11,000 a year on alcohol.
Well, that was spent last year. We're not hiding, but that came from ticketed events that the members paid for, or sponsored events that somebody sponsored. It was not a dues dollar. None of your dues dollar. There's nobody on this call other than Bert West that paid for alcohol last year, and it didn't come out of my dues dollars. It came off my credit card, but don't tell Sandy. Those 2 kegs of beer that were at the Oak Ridge Boys concert, I paid for those. I sponsored that and I paid for it. And so that free beer that was in the concert the last 3 or 4 years, that make sure it was Coors Light, that free beer came out of my pocket. And Katrina's out. I'm not doing it no more. I'm done, but but anyway, that 11,000 that was in the budget, not in the budget, but that was expended last year, was strictly either ticketed events, a dinner that maybe some training people came into and they paid for, $40 or $50 for the dinner, or a sponsorship from outside sources, or somebody like me that wrote the check.
Right. Yeah, it's always been that way, that if you wish to purchase alcohol, you paid for it and stuff. And let's talk about the culture differences.
Well, I also want to point out that's in our policy.
Right.
We have a policy against that, so we don't do that. So the other part about that particular issue is we have to remember that Kiwanis is a global organization, and the culture in Divide, Colorado is not the same as the culture in Luxembourg. It's not the same as the culture in Taipei. They pay their dues into their club, and they pay club dues. And part of that expectation is that they have a dinner. They might have a bottle of wine. They might, in some countries, they love their scotch, And so, and if you make this policy like this, you're saying that those clubs can no longer do that. And so to me, I just think it's a non-topic, and it's nothing that we've ever really spent money on. I don't know where it comes from, but either way, I just think that there's very little money, if any, and I promise you no dues money going to that.
Right. And there's some comments coming in on chat is, if we paid for our own alcohol, but if I needed an upgrade, we paid for our own upgrade. We do this, we serve in these roles for, we're doing it because we love what we're doing, and we're behind the mission of it. And if I had the miles, which often I did, I would upgrade. Or back when I was in the 15-16 era, upgrades were much more frequent, right? You could get an upgrade, and after you got to know the flight attendants on the same flights, because you were flying them all the time, they would automatically upgrade you. Oh, Sue's back. Where are you going this week? They would do that. So, things are different now, but, we paid for our upgrades. And if
it's still that way.
Maybe my mom, if my mom traveled with me, I paid for my mom, right? It's just that opportunity to do that. So, okay, I think we can put those to bed. So if anybody has any questions, we can say we're answered that. One of the other questions that came up was, you talk about the cost of dues, and but my club charges $500 a year, and my club charges $200 a year. And I last week was able to put some screenshots up, which I'm not going to try today because I don't want to shut us down. The differences in costs for clubs. So my club, I pay $180 a year to be a member. That's my district dues, my Kiwanis International dues, and my club dues. Now my club supplements and pays for our insurance. Our insurance is out of our service service account. Now, I was talking with Ben from our marketing department. He pays $135 a year for his dues. He lives 15 miles away from the downtown Indianapolis club. Their dues are like $350 a year. And that's just their dues. It doesn't include their parking and their meals and stuff. And I looked at a club in San Diego, and I found all this on the website. There was a club in San Diego that you pay $300 a year, if you're a young professional, and then $250 a year if you're a new professional. So I mean, there were all different rates of, of clubs. There was a club in I think it was Westlake, Ohio, that I looked up, that I found online, that said their fees, I want to say $200, $130, said, okay, you're paying for your district dues, your District 14 dues, which I believe meant their division dues, their Kiwanis International dues, and they had a Lenten breakfast fee. So the club wraps in their dues themselves. So when people start talking about why are my dues so expensive, that $52 for your dues, your $23 for your insurances, your $8 for your publication fee is what comes to Kiwanis International, not
So I
the
think,
$500.
and I think that's very important. That's one of the reasons why, cost of a living increase would always have a percentage attached to it, and that was one of the things that made it difficult because, when I think of my club, my wife, Sandy, pays $180 because she's in our satellite club, and that's all she pays. And if she goes to dinner, when they go to dinner, she buys her dinner, and I pay, I think, 605 or something, somewhere around $600, and that's all inclusive. And so that comes with a breakfast 52 weeks a year, or 50 weeks out of the year. And so that's district dues, international dues, everything included, plus the breakfast. So I think that's the hard part, is for people to think of when they hear like $25, or they hear 20 or 30 or whatever it is. That's on top of what they're already paying. But most of the dues you pay, pretty much everybody on this call, most of the dues, I would suspect, go to the district and the club, or at least half, versus the international portion.
Right. And I
But
mean,
I love the fact that every club does that, and every club builds that in, and they do what they feel is best for their club. And I think that's the most important part about Kiwanis, is each club can do what they feel is best for their club and their community. And that's the same part about how they charge their dues, just like in, some places in Europe, that includes their dinner, and that includes, so yeah.
and I mean, I can say that my club dues for the East Lansing Kiwanis Club are the same amount as my Kiwanis International dues.
Yeah.
And that's why when you start adding up, you're like, well, I'm paying this much money. Well, reality is only a portion of that is going to Kiwanis International. Now,
Right.
you may be paying the check to Kiwanis, to your club. They spend the dues in and they get distributed. And that's the kind of stuff you go, okay, yes, you may be paying 400, but of that 400, only 73 or $74 is actually going to Kiwanis International.
Right.
For $83. It's going to Kiwanis International. Okay, let me run through my questions here. If you have anything else to go. So we know the board will come up with an amendment, or has an amendment they will be proposing for a $25 dues increase. The question was asked about, can clubs still submit amendments? Can districts submit amendments?
Unfortunately, they have 4 days.
Right.
October 31st is the deadline. So, but they can, and I think there's a couple more amendments that I heard about, coming from different parts of the world. Not all about dues. I mean, there's,
right.
Always different amendments. And that's the beauty of our organization as a club. And I always like to say Craig, Colorado, because Craig, Colorado is a vibrant, exciting club that's not involved in anything in our district or international, but that club does all kinds of good things in their community. And they could come up tomorrow and say, we'd like to, put an amendment into the bylaws that says that everybody has to wear a gray cowboy hat, like Bert. I mean, it's as simple as that. I don't expect anything like that, but but it's similar. That's what the beauty of our organization is. A club or a district has just as much right to submit a bylaw amendment as the board does. So, and then the board decides one way or the other. Are they going to support it? They're not going to support it. There's a lot of club, there are districts that'll submit a bylaw amendment, and the board looks at it and goes, hey, that's a good amendment. We're going to support that,
Right.
Or they just don't feel like that's a good amendment for the worldwide organization, and so they don't support it. So,
right. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We've got time for a few questions in the chat. We're just going to take everything through the chat to make it easier so that we don't interrupt the technology. That's my goal here, is not to interrupt the technology. So the one question I have here is that there's a difference between the Kiwanis convention budget and the Kiwanis master budget.
Well, I don't know that there's a total difference. Conventions also is a department in
Correct.
the master budget. So it's not a separate budget. And conventions typically are subsidized by your membership dollars out of, either the revenue or reserves and some other things. And my position has always been to give the best convention experience that you can give to our members because it's their money. It's their money, and let's spend it on the members. And so I'm a big proponent of keeping the registration fees down, and if that means we have to subsidize a little bit, then I'd rather have, 2,000 members there subsidized a little bit than 1,000 members there that aren't subsidized. So I'll answer that, Greg. It is not. It is not. It's not built that way. We take the budget of the whole for the convention, we set the registration fee, and then we have to feel like, what is our appetite for subsidizing this convention? Typically, it's $250,000 to $300,000 of your money, and so that's where that big reserve that we use some of that for is to make sure you have a great convention experience. Make sure that when you get there, you have the forums that you want. We have the technology that you want for streaming. I think we streamed like 10 seminars last year. I mean, that's an amazing capability that we can do that for our members worldwide if they can't be there. Not even going to get into the fact that, we don't have remote voting because that's not the topic tonight, but that is why it's not a zero budget on the convention line. Otherwise, the meals would be, bad enough. Then you go to Saturday night dinner at $75. Probably it should be $125.
Right.
But we try to incorporate all of that into the master budget and to see what we can do to keep the cost of a convention as low as we can.
And we understand that some clubs support and subsidize members' attendance, other clubs don't.
Yeah.
And so all that is I mean, we don't sit down and go, how many do we think? But it's more of a point, like, we realize that people have a budget to work on,
So, yeah. Can I answer that question that you did? I'm not going to look at every chat question, but
right.
I just
go ahead.
We have tried that in the past. We've tried to get some subsidies. We've tried to get some outside people to, sponsor it. There's not a lot of organizations, unless you want to get the bathtub fitters, that are willing to come, and give us $100,000 or $200,000, to do that. And so it would take a lot of time and effort on staff to come up with, $300,000 or $400,000 worth of sponsorships.
Right.
It seems a little easier to do at our convention last year. We were able to do that. We got some sponsorship to pay, but our convention didn't cost as much. So, but I think that's something they're always looking at. I think it's something that, the board is tasked Paul with, is looking at, other revenue streams. It's not like we haven't been doing that,
right.
But sometimes a fresh, set of eyes can find another revenue stream that we hadn't considered. I mean, maybe we go ask every roofer in the country, to kick in some money, and they get to walk around on the Minneapolis Superdome. I don't know, so, I mean, we don't know what we don't know what those streams are, but there is those type of, things. So, but they have tried that in the past. Sometimes, remember, we used to have a bigger World Showcase, had a lot more vendors. The key to the World Showcase and having those vendors is having our members go in and talk to them, and having our members go in and buy from them,
right?
So they come back.
And we know that, as a person who does this kind of work as well, there has to be something in it for the sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just, I mean, they're either going to want, nowadays they want emails and texts, and they want access to a lot of things that we just don't provide. We're not.
And that's probably the biggest issue, is the fact that we're not willing to give them what they want as far as membership information.
Right.
And but there's probably people out there that would do it just because they want to. We just, So yeah.
So here's a question I'm going to ask. Has Kiwanis International ever considered a consolidated overall budget with the districts and have a more equalized budget across the entire organization? And I think we're probably not going to answer that today, but that's a great question. Have they ever considered a consolidated overall budget?
Like with all the different districts?
All the districts, yep.
Oh, wow. We have never considered that. I don't think we've ever considered. They haven't considered that in 7 or 8 years that I've been on the board. But I think it goes back to local control and local, not every district's the same. You know, what we do in the Rocky Mountain District is not the same as what's going on in Southwest or Kansas. And we want those districts to run their organization as what is best for Kansas, not what is best for Denver, you know, or the Rocky Mountain District. So, not saying that wouldn't be considered, but I'm just saying I was, of all the questions I thought you were going to ask, Sue, that is not it.
Well, here's so another question that I received was talking points for midwinters and upcoming meetings. When will that information be available? You know, how are we going to have that, you know, information out there? Any kind of time frame on that? I know that there has to be consideration finished on the amendment. As a person who's sitting on that bylaws and regulations committee, I watch my emails blow up every day with all the stuff that's coming in. So,
well, the talking points for the dues increase are ready, and they've gone out to the board. They've gone out and they're giving those to the governors, and they're going to be putting more of that. Katrina's, you know, talking with her governors. And so those talking points are going to be there, and they're going to be at mid-years. They're going to be at the midwinters. They're going to be at your lieutenant governor trainings, or whatever you gather together. Those talking points and those questions and those answers are available, and they're already available. And so we just got to disseminate that information out. And I know that Ben and Jenny, who's on the call, are working very diligent at getting that information out to not just the leaders, but to the members. We want the club members to see what we're doing. We want them to understand why we're doing this. We want them to understand why we feel the need to do this. You know, it's not just 19 people that were sitting up there in Indianapolis and say, hey, let's just raise the dues, you know? And so it's very important that every club member, whether they go to a convention or not, understands what our organization is doing and how we're run.
right. Very true. And I know that we will continue some of these conversations, and we will make these recordings available. The recording that we did last year with Peter Mancuso and myself and Bob Broderick, we'll look at another one like that and make those available, and, you know, talk about it. Well, I'm sure there'll be workshops at the convention. We'll just keep the conversation going, and then the questions that keep coming in, we'll figure out a way to start, you know, making sure that information gets out there, so that we have an opportunity to share that and get it out now. I mean, we're talking conventions, what do we say, 7 months away, 8 months away? We're 5 months ahead of where we were, 9 months. Okay, see, you know, we're months ahead of where we were last year at this point. So, we got a question about what are the methods you're talking to grow our income other than dues increases?
I saw that my good buddy Bobby, who I had the privilege of being his board counselor when he was governor. You know, we've tried a lot of different things over the years with the marketing team, not the marketing team, the PR team, and then also the relationship, you know, team. And it was very difficult, you know, to get a sponsor that would want to come in and, like, say, put an ad in our magazine, you know, or to put an ad there, and the time it took to put it together sometimes wasn't worth, you know, what they did. One of our great sponsors that we have right now is Landscape Structures, and that help build playgrounds. And, you know, they've been a long-term sponsor of ours, and they're a great partner. You know, our partners we reach out to, but, you know, there's a lot of people that want to be a partner with Kiwanis, but we have to make sure it's a value to, you know, organization, you know, either worldwide, because if it's just regional, it doesn't do much good. So that's a very difficult task. And we do have people that work in that department that look at that. And so there is some of that. I mean, not all of the budget, you know, is built on dues only. A lot of that is built on reserves, not reserve spending, but reserve or investment returns. And a lot of that is built on our partnerships and also retail on the store side of it. So about 50% of that budget comes outside of your dues. And so there's always a lot of that. And we should probably be more cognizant of telling that story, that there's more money coming in than just the dues, you know.
And I know the person who works with sponsorships as well, a lot of that was, a lot of companies eliminated that stuff, that funding and those extra sources during pandemic, as they were starting to revamp their companies, you know, like, okay, people are working from home or not working from home. How many companies didn't exist after the pandemic? And a lot of groups that I used to work with for sponsors said, we're just not doing it anymore because we can't afford it. So it's not like they just cut us out completely. They just they have to look at what's best for their clientele as well.
You know, I mean, a classic example of that, Sue, is in my industry, the roofing industry. You get a big roofing manufacturer, you know, Owens Corning. We all
Right.
probably know who that is, big manufacturer. If I called them up and said, hey, you know, not just them specifically, but if I called them up and I said, hey, why don't you give $50,000 to this great organization to help them? And I don't think we could do that. But if I called them up and said, hey, we'd like to take 30 customers on a trip to Hawaii, you know, okay, here's $50,000, you know, but it's their perspective. And so it's the perspective, even though we have a great mission and what we do is wonderful, we have to tie that sponsor with something that they can see, that they can market, something that they can advertise. So partnerships is very difficult for an organization like ours.
And it's very difficult for an organization that I work for, and I work for a big university.
Yeah.
Right. So it goes everywhere. Bobby asked some questions about, I think he said he was referring to membership. One of our sessions that we will do, probably in January after the new year, was we'll be focusing on how members and how our districts and how our clubs are growing their membership. One thing I'll add really quickly in here is that I have invited the last 3 speakers who have spoken to our club, and we have membership applications from all of them, because you know what they said? No one ever asked me to join.
Yeah.
And as simple as it is, right? It's there. So we're just finding there's more interest, and well, our goal will be that we can have some people that their clubs are growing, share some of that information with us. And as we are finding, and I think we all know that it's all dependent on your community, and it all depends on, you know, someone said to me, well, people are not going to join if we're charging more money. It's like, what's the value of your club?
I'm going to point out something about that.
Go for it.
Everybody said that if we raised the dues $30, we were going to lose members. We had the same, little bit less loss without raising dues that we have over the last 20 years. So the number was the same with or without it. I don't think there's a correlation, to be honest with you. I really don't. I think sometimes in my mind, I want to think there's a direct correlation. But when I see the numbers over the years, I don't know that there is a direct correlation.
Right.
There's going to be one or two. There's going to be a few, you know, and there always will be. And that's heart-wrenching to me that one member would leave because of a decision that I made. That just breaks my heart. But the correlation does not show when you look at the stats of our membership growth or decline. Either way, there's never a bump one way or the other when we've had a dues increase.
And I still go back to, you know, it comes back to what a new member that we brought in. What do you do in your club? Didn't understand the club. And, you know, now that we've started talking about it, of course, she's jumped in full force, and she's actually working on, Katrina to be happy, our governor's, she's working on district level committees already. She's been a member of our club less than 3 months. But she's like, I love what you're doing. Let me do it. And no one's holding her back. So she's ready to go and do things. So it's all about promoting who you are and what we do. And, you know, what's the value? I mean, to me, the value, honestly, one of the biggest values I have is all the people I have that I know all over the world, right? I could never have that in person. I mean, I know when I see people at a conference, whether I've met them or I just know them on Facebook, we're friends. Yeah. It doesn't matter. There's more to that than that value. Okay, so Bert, you got a wrap up comment you want to make?
Yeah, I do. And I talked about this last week. I'm hoping there's some definitely, Cynthia, that's the best thing said all night long, but a lot better than anything I had to say. We just got to keep telling our story, you know. Can I remove the spotlight so I can see everybody?
Yes, I will do that. Yep. Okay, there you go.
Thanks. I said this last week. There's a lot of different people on here. You know, we're a global organization. We're worldwide. And I had the distinct honor and privilege to be your president last year and to experience that we are a worldwide organization. And what I learned is that we all have a different perspective, and we all have a different way of looking at Kiwanis. You know, Kiwanis in Divide, Colorado is totally different than Lansing, Michigan, I promise you, you know, but then it's really different when you get to Reykjavik, you know, or when you get to Taipei, or when you get to New Delhi. I mean, their perspective of what Kiwanis looks like and how Kiwanis should be run is totally different. But what ties us all together is our passion, And that passion is always about what is best for our individual community. And so when we looked at this dues increase, because that's what we're talking about, when we looked at that, we had to look at all those perspectives coming together. And it might not be perfect for every nation. It might not even be hurtful in some nations, but we had to find that middle ground that we thought would work best as a board. And it's not going to be perfect for everybody. It's not going to be, harmful for everybody. It's going to be in the middle somewhere. But we felt, there's 19 people on that board with all the staff members, and it wasn't decided in a day. This $25 dues increase got started the day after the convention. Actually, got started backstage. Paul can tell you, I walked right back to him and I said, we got a plan right now for the future of our organization, starting this moment. And he's looking up there. I can see him up there. Did I not walk back there immediately? I walked off the stage and I said, we are planning right now for the future of our organization, not next year, not 5 years, but 10 years from now. And we have to do better than we did. And he was standing there next to Stan, and I got right to both of them and said, we have to start planning now for our future. And so this has been going on since then, and it's been a long process to get to where we are right now. But when you look at this, I want you to look at it and think about a club all the way around the world from you, and think about their perspective of Kiwanis, and what we do ties together. We couldn't do what we do in Romania with the Ukrainian refugees if it wasn't for all of us being there to support them. Couldn't do that. They couldn't have the houses that I saw and the schools and the medical clinics in Africa that I witnessed, and I just was crying when I saw this, if it wasn't for all of us providing an organization to support them. And so hopefully you look at the $25 that way and not as $25. The value of our organization. And Romania actually grew this year. Thank you, Hope. So, but that would be my final statement, is that it's a value for all of us. And it's an organization that provides these opportunities for clubs to support some very needy children around the world. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you, Bert. Paul, would you have any? I know you have kept quiet today, but maybe, Paul, if you have anything you want to say?
I'd just like to say thanks to Bert and Sue for making this opportunity available to Kiwanians to have their questions answered. When I was listening to delegates last year in Minneapolis, I heard the message that they wanted the Kiwanis International Board to cut perks, not programs. And I think it's important to note that another amendment that the Kiwanis International Board is offering at the Denver Convention is to reduce the size of the Kiwanis International Board. And that will be significant savings as well. And it means that, again, the Kiwanis International Board is listening. Thanks for that opportunity, Sue.
Thanks, Paul. President Katrina, are you still with us?
I am still with you.
You are. Would you like to make any comments?
I would. I just want to thank you and Bert for your work on this, and to say that, as Bert said, we've really been working hard to make this work for everyone, because we need Kiwanis for hundreds and hundreds of more years. And I'm like Bert, when I go out into communities and clubs and districts, it's why I know what we do. So thank all of you. And I hope that you will take this message back to your clubs and your district, and know that we need to do this to move Kiwanis forward. So thank you too for what you're doing to let everyone know how important this is.
Thank you, Katrina. We
And
will.
one last thing, Sue, is if a question comes up, feel free to ask any board member.
Right.
Email me. I promise you I will respond.
And there are many board members on the call tonight. If you have a chance to flip through the pictures, there are many board members on the call, which I think is a great show of support for our organization. And I think that for those of us that have served on the board, and those that, have desires to serve on the board, it's definitely it's a commitment. It's a 7-year commitment. And you'll look at it and go, okay, but I will tell you at the end of the thing, as I have told people, I would do it again in a heartbeat. People are like, you're nuts. I'm like, no, I would do it again in a heartbeat, because of the people that I met and the work that I saw that I got to do, and how proud it made me of the work that we do as an organization. And I wouldn't be sitting here today hosting something like this if I didn't believe in the mission of our organization. There are many other things I could be doing like many of you tonight, but it's that important to me that, you know, I give my time as well. And I appreciate the fact that you're all with us tonight. We will get this recording. It is still recording for those of you that are, it's still recording. I will get it downloaded tonight. We'll put it up on the web or on Facebook as well. We'll make some links available. One thing I always like to tell people is that I'm not going to go in and make it pretty. I don't know how to do that kind of stuff. You're going to get actually what we hear, what we started and what we end with. And then you may find clubs in the past have used these programs and shown part of it at a meeting and showed another part at another meeting and broke it up. And then I will be working with Paul and Bert and Katrina and the board to do some individual, like 7-minute sections that we can show throughout the year. We'll start working on those as time permits here, but we do want to make sure that all your questions are answered. And if you do have questions, you're welcome to contact me as well. All of our information's in the directory, and those in Michigan most people have my direct phone line. So thank you very much for being with us tonight. Have a great evening. Wherever or great day. Kwanyang, have a great day. You're just getting your day started. The rest of us will be relaxing. We'll see you next Thursday, same time, same place, and I'll let you know what the subject is next week. Thanks, everybody.